Now, I've been a writer since I've been in third grade. I started writing narrative stories um, as part of a class project. The teacher had access to a laminating machine and one of those spirally binder things. Puts the little piece of plastic, it spirals it through your paper, and that paired with construction paper for covers, and the really wide ruled paper that you had in elementary school in circa 1990. Uh, we would we would be given writing tasks. Our teacher was very adamant about making us write, and I think the fabulous part about that was it was a real great creative outlet for kids, especially at that time. We didn't have all of these modern. I'm not trying to sound like an old man, but we didn't have all of this other stuff. We relied heavily on imagination, and in in that setting, being given those instructions, being told, okay, you're going to write a book. So we did, and my first book was based on the 60s TV show Get Smart. I loved that show as a kid and still do. It's still a fabulous show, holds up. But I wanted to create a story about characters that I absolutely loved. So I did. I made I made an episode of Get Smart as my first book writing assignment. So the teacher laminated the covers and used the plastic bindy thing to hold it all together. And as a matter of fact, in a tote or storage bin somewhere, it is still intact. Not only that book, but my second book, strangely enough, also based on other people's IP. My second book was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles story. So in third grade, I was writing stories without the most explicit of permissions and had them turned in for third grade class credit. And that's really how I became a writer. Now on the WADcast, there's always been the discussion about what makes you a writer, and I believe the simplest definition is once you write, you're a writer. So in the purest sense of the words, yes, that's when I became a writer. I'd say I'd uh, I'd become a better writer after leaving Alaska and going to Florida. As a matter of fact, middle school. Let's see, middle school might have been seventh grade. The only thing I wanted for Christmas is a typewriter. A typewriter. Seventh grader wants nothing but a typewriter, and I got one. I used it to type up, different short stories, silly things. The only one, as a matter of fact, that I actually recall off the top of my head was the origin stories of bald eagles. How did they get bald? And the gist of it was eagle goes to the barber. Someone says, "Hey, look, Elvis is over there," and that causes the barber to slip, and henceforth and forever, the bald eagle was born. Okay, it was, I was a kid. Okay, it might not be the most, tragic or heroic, 3 act, journey, but for a cute little story, I think it worked out fine. It wasn't until maybe 8th or ninth grade, I don't recall, that I actually got just a tiny bit serious about writing. And the thing is, the project that I decided to work on was big. Okay. And I didn't work on it alone. It was actually my first time collaborating with anybody. There was, in Alaska, I quick side note. The first time I no, that wasn't even the first time I was on stage. The first time I did stand up was in 4th grade with my friend Danny. And again, using so many terms loosely when it comes to being in 4th grade and doing quote stand up comedy. It was just us doing jokes that we saw in a kid's book, right? A kid's joke book. And and it was terrible. But going back to the writing, um, my best friend Sean and I collaborated on a novel, legit, a legit novel. It was, by the time it was all said and done, over 200 pages in a 3-ring binder, and it was good. It was good. It was damn good, and it was based on kind of a D&D campaign. Okay, a little tiny bit more backstory. In what was it? 7th grade, 8th grade too, maybe not so much 8th grade, but in middle school, put it like that. When you didn't dress out for gym, you were made to just walk the track. So what my friends and I would do, I moved there in seventh grade, so these these were like the first guys that kind of took me under their wing and made me a part of their group. Um, it was a paperless, diceless D&D campaign circling the track. Mike was the uh, DM, the storyteller, if you will, and we would talk about what we would do, like any other D&D campaign. And we had a blast. And it really opened up my eyes to like different ways of telling a story, especially an interactive story. And I really loved that time in my life. So what I proposed to Sean was, let's take that story, or at least as much as we can remember, and kind of write it. Let's write it down. And we did. And it was beautiful. And I found out quickly, well, not after 200 pages, not so quickly, but I found out that I had two fundamental flaws with my work. One, I was not good at endings. So when I got to the ending, I dropped the ball. It was not a great ending. And the other the other fundamental flaw is I'm not good, or at least I wasn't good with criticism of like myself. So I was like, man, this ending sucks. And very selfishly, I threw the whole damn thing in the garbage and walked away. Never mind the 200 plus pages of wonderful storytelling about a wizard and his best friend, a warrior, and how they are, went through these journeys to help each other. No, just all in the trash. And for a long time, that would kind of become my thing. When things weren't going exactly my way, I didn't, just okay. I'm out. I'm done. Toss it. But luckily, before I became an adult, I worked on that, and now I'm kind of a look. I'm going to stick with it all the way through, no matter what, and even after, because every piece of art deserves, its existence. But I gotta admit, it was quite a while before I took my writing very seriously. My creative writing, I should say. I never took scholastic writing seriously at all. I always turned in the first draft, and you know everything was passing. So it's like, what does it matter? Kids, if you're watching, it matters. So work hard. But after years went by, and I hadn't done anything writing creatively for a while, I found myself in a group of creative people. Tiny and Timbone, the first TV series that I ever wrote for. Well, it would have been a TV series. We wrote the first season. I'm talking about this portion of my life because we can't get to where we're going without passing through here first. So in a different segment, I'll go into more detail about the origins of how we met, but at this point, for the writing part of this program, just know that this is where I met Ramsey. I haven't really wanted to talk about anything that's happened between us all those years ago, but again, it's not a part of the story that can be omitted. You know, I learned things working with that guy. Some good, some bad. But, learning is learning. I learned how to format, for the most part, I learned how to format script writing. And that would push me forward to create my own ideas for TV series. So, to date, I've written, we'll say, five television pilots. That sounds about right. And one of them is going to be a Wadco media production. So it's important. It's important to the narrative of my life to have this chapter because it all started with writing Tiny and Timbone with Ramsey, characters that he absolutely 100% created. Let's see, what did I add? Basically the family aspect. I brought some of that to the table. That's how I helped. And I helped, craft the arc for the season. In fact, to this day, I still think it's a very cool and funny story that could probably still fit in today's kind of world. I learned a lot writing on that. And because of that, I was asked to help write season 3 of his flagship show, Ghost. Um, kind of a machinima animated action thriller deal. And yeah, it was the three of us, myself, Ramsey, and Dina. Personally, again, not a bad experience. Met Dina over the internet and had a good time. Had a good time collaborating. That was like my first official adult, collaboration thing going on is with two or more, not just a friend, but two or more writers, everybody coming together for a common goal, if you will. So at that point, I had basically 2 seasons of scripts under my belt, and I was feeling confident. I was feeling like, okay, I kind of have a handle on this because I have an idea that I want to bring to life. I have something that I want to develop. So that's when Extra Life was born. I crafted these characters into being and developed this idea of these people that work at a video game store. One of the complete idea, is sometimes you get dealt some different hands in life and you don't know where you're going to end up. In this particular instance, one of the characters was a bank manager and lost his job. So he took the first gig his cousin made available to him, which was a video game store employee. And that's kind of where the series picks up, where you got one guy that was, you know, successful to the world at large, or anybody that cared to have an opinion, and this cousin that's just been selling and playing video games his entire life, but he's happy as hell doing it. And it's how they interact with the demeanors and the antics of the people around them. It became apparent that developing this series was going to be a bit much for one person. So that's when a call was made, and Brandon, Brandon from the WADcast, that's when Brandon was brought on board. And together, he and I developed Extra Life. And with the help of Sparkles, we were able to knock out a full season. So, also going on at this time, I was actually in college. One of those older people that went to college to finally get their degree, but alas, I had to drop out of that too, which was fair. I had to find a a job to help take care of the family. It just it was what needed to be done. But it turns out this strange twist of fate would lead me to meeting another guy named Josh that was not only into writing but all sorts of different productions. He's a director and actor. Josh Townsend is an amazingly talented individual and someone that I'm glad I can call my friend. It it was working together where we were talking about our shared interest that he asked me to help him shoot a short film. And of course I said yes. That's what we do here. We say yes. And I can't really say that I did much in the way of creative, came up with a couple of good shots that looked really good, but for the most part, I'd say 99% of it was him. And Henry, our Nader. For those of you familiar with the podcast, you know who Henry, our Nader, is. And things went well, very well. And we finished a short film. And next thing you know, I'm getting invited to, hey, you want to help out on this feature? It's called Shoot the Messenger. So I said yes, because again, that's what we do. We say yes. And I became friends with, you know, another community, and an actual filmmaking community here in Florida. And from there, a lot of things were done. Josh shot a follow up to that short film. I believe the short film was called Horror, and the follow up was called Trace and Lacey Forever. And the inspiration for these movies, the first one started off because of a breakup for Josh, and the second one was, I'd say it was just because Josh had an idea and he wanted to keep working with the female lead, from Horror, Audra, whom wonderful, wonderful, amazing person. So when it came time to kind of fill out the trilogy, I wrote something. And throughout the first two short films, Audra had displayed this pretty good range, as an actress. And I had one goal in mind when I came up with and wrote the third short film. And it was all in the title. And that was Make Her Cry. Because I wanted to see that performance. To break it down real quick, Make Her Cry was about a young woman who, in the heat of the moment, if you catch my drift, her boyfriend accidentally dies, and she starts having this breakdown as she hallucinates him talking to her, telling her that it's going to be okay, and it gets weird. I'll be honest, it is weird. It gets weird. And that's, I think, one of the biggest selling points of that story. And unfortunately, it's not one that will ever be completed. And that's it. Now it was during this time that I was working this job where Brandon would call me as I was on my way between houses to service, and we would talk. We would have idle chatters, and we would talk about funny things and just have fun. Have fun talking. Hey, wouldn't this be silly? Wouldn't this be stupid? And every once in a while we'd come up with something that we'd go, yeah, that has legs. We could do something with that. And most of the time, I never thought anything about this stuff ever again. But one day, I was driving along And it's so weird how clearly I remember this. My memory sucks, but this I remember I was on Ramona Boulevard, and I was driving along, and we were talking about how funny would it be as a sketch if there was just this talent agent that was terrible at his job. And again, it fell under the I never really thought about it again. And then sometimes time goes by. Some time goes by, and Brandon sends me a message like years later and has this link. He sends me this link and he says, "Watch this." And it's a link to a film, on a short film on Amazon Prime, which you can still check out. And it was Bad Agent, and I watched it and I was like, "Oh my god, this is like everything that we talked about." The bastard went and made it. He made that thing that we talked about making, and he made it. And if Brandon was here, he could tell you just how important that short was to him, and you know where he is right now as a writer and producer. But for me personally, seeing a character played so beautifully, like, I mean, exactly like I saw it in my mind, by none other than Brian Wallace, amazingly talented individual. It it was it was mind blowing. It was earth shattering, and I'm not using any of these terms lightly here. This this changed my life trajectory, because it went from being a dream to a possibility, to have ideas that come from here wind up on a screen and done well. Not just don't get I love the fact that over the years my friends and I have done some really awesome stuff, but none of it has ever been like super well thought out or planned. It's just, wouldn't it be great if we did this, and then we did it. So to see something that so closely reflected the vision in my head, and now that I know that Brandon and I were totally simpatico with the way the character should be, everything, it opened up my eyes to a possibility that just wasn't there before. It didn't exist. So it happened, and we continued working on developing that character. We're still working on developing that to this day, because we're both in love with the character, and we're both in love with the premise. And hopefully, one day soon, It'll be more than just thoughts in our head and words on a page, because we are that close. We are that close. But after continuing the extensive writing for the character, and fleshing out a series of characters for this guy to interact with, I thought about where I was in life, and the things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to be. And then I thought about what my situation was, being a single father in how do they put it, a multi generational home. I'm 40 years old. I play video games. I do podcasts. I write. I act. I've even tried directing a couple of times, which, oh, you're going to see exactly what that looked like a little bit later. But I decided that maybe the next story that I might want to tell should be mine, right? What if I told my story? I'm not saying, go back to the very beginning, because God knows there are so many different chapters in my life that could make some sort of series, like the army, or, you know, of course, school. Everybody's school days could have been a TV series, right? Any of the weird jobs that I've had over the years, any number of these experiences could have been, a series worth developing. But I'm talking about where my life is right now. So I started developing that. I wrote a pilot. I sent it in to kind of get some feedback on where it was. Unfortunately, just if I'm putting an asterisk on it, because you know what? I sent in a rough draft. But you know what? It still didn't get dumped on. And no, it wasn't selected for any jury whatever's. But I think the highest praise that I could have gotten for doing this for the first time, sending something in to be professionally um, torn apart, uh, the highest bit of praise I could think of was, I want to see what happens next. They pointed out some redundancies in the story, and how I was doing, things more than once, and that makes sense, because in the second draft of that, some of the stuff, some of the scenes that they talked about being repetitive were completely omitted. They were deleted, taken out completely, and replaced with something that kept the story moving at a better clip. But essentially, it became a story about my life and where it's at right now. And the reader said, I want to see what happens next. Which is kind of weird, because I only had enough material for the pilot. I only took a snapshot of what's going on right now. I made it very current, very present. And the thing is, I don't know what happens next. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of, speculation involved. I did take a lot of liberties with the characters in this. It's titled Pressing On, and I look forward to giving it another run through. I've had enough time to kind of process what I think might or might not work. I've reread the second draft a couple of times, and I'm not saying that it's perfect because if you're a writer, it's never perfect. But I I feel like I'm ready to make the changes that need to be changed for it to maybe get in front of the right eyes. Because yeah, it's easy to say that your words are not holy, they're not set in stone, but it's another thing to be in front of that final draft document with that cursor blinking over all of those words that you wrote, and you're trying to figure out which ones aren't worthy. But eventually, I'm going to have to make the cuts. I'm going to have to do some additions, and I'm going to make some changes. And in the meantime, I'm also writing a children's book. I'm not really going to divulge too much about that, but maybe one day you'll be able to point back to this very moment in time and realize, oh, that's what that was. Everybody knows what that is. Well, this was the first time that I've mentioned it out loud. So you're welcome, people, for this history making. How long have I been acting? I guess you could say I've been acting since I was in kindergarten when I played the juicy role of Beanstalk in our kindergarten production of Peter Rabbit. It's funny because I even broke the one rule that the teacher gave us, which was, of course, don't wave at your parents. You, you're a beanstalk. I did. I broke the hell out of it. But, for some of you saying that doesn't count, fine, fine. I guess my experience in acting actually does begin in high school. Junior year, I took a drama class. Thought it'd be easy, so I thought it would be fun. Didn't think I would have to do any acting or anything because honestly, I and still do somewhat to this day have this anxiety about getting up in front of people. I know. Look at me. I'm talking to millions of people right now. But it's different when they're standing in front of you. And it's not an uncommon fear. Okay? I am not abnormal in that regard. But there came a point in time in this drama class where the teacher said, "All right, everybody's going to be doing monologues, performing monologues in front of the class." And you know what? Didn't like that at all. And I mean, what can you do? I needed the credit to graduate because that year they shortened our, not the day, but the class schedule. Instead of having 7 classes, we only had 6. And me being the brilliant guy that I am, decided to take freshman and sophomore study halls the first 2 years. And then two things that will not get you credits to graduate. And so there I was, in dire need of getting this credit, and my grade suddenly relied on being able to be in front of people. So I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I remembered something. I remembered that in the back of the textbooks that there were monologues that for performing. And One of those monologues was from a musical play called You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Now, the reason this appealed to me is because I knew that I would have anxiety and, possible depression about having to perform in front of my peers. So I wanted a role that would reflect that. So, in other words, the acting would be minimal. The hard part would be remembering the lines, but just barely remembering them because the more I panic, the more believable the performance is. Because it was the scene in which what was Charlie Brown sees the red-haired girl, red hair, the curly red hair girl. I don't something like that. Anyway, so there we are in class. I do my monologue, and everyone's like, "Yeah, that was great." I was like, "Well, it wasn't really acting. I nearly crapped myself." And at that point, I went from being one of the, I guess, the book workers, right, to one of the people that read scripts and acted. And that's when I was told, not asked, mind you, told that the spring musical's coming up and I'm going to be in it. I'm going to be in a musical. I mean, it was difficult enough to stand up in front of a small classroom, not even a full classroom, like 11 people, and say a monologue that lasted all of 2 minutes. And now I'm being told by this crazy woman that the next step, that the next logical step is to get on stage and sing and dance. Good Lord. I thought I was going to die. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about acting, right? It seems the more prepared you are for it, the less reason you have to be worried. So we spent months, probably more like weeks. We spent weeks preparing for this show. I played Nicely Johnson in Guys and Dolls. And for some of you in the know, maybe you're familiar with the musical. That means I went from, oh my God, I have to read these words in front of 5 people to, okay, not only am I in this musical, but I have a solo number. What? Yeah. And it went well. It went very well. I was surprised at myself. I was like, this is good. I like this. The rush, the feeling of, oh my God, am I going to pass out on this stage? And knowing that I won't, but also knowing that, hey, those people around me, they're here to support me. And it's not to throw shade, as the kids say, but if I messed up, it would be hard for people to notice. For if you were there, kind of reasons. Uh, but anyway, so I did that, and then the very next year we did a bunch of performances. My senior year, we did all sorts of plays, and I was all up and down the bill until of course, we get to another spring musical, and then what happens? Well, somewhere along the line, somebody was inspired to, I don't know, we should do You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And guess who's going to be Charlie Brown? Who? You are, Josh. No, seriously, who? You. No. I'm like fifth banana kind of guy. I'm not your lead. That's not how this. Oh God. Good grief. So that's how I fell in love with acting. And I did a little bit in college. The first time I went when I was still like 19, around there. And one of my favorite things was we did a takeoff on SNL's Weekend Update, and I played Jimmy Fallon. And it was back when Jimmy Fallon and Tina Fey were hosting, not well, they were the Weekend Update, and we did a few bits around that. It's kind of I don't know, it's kind of thing, right? And we also had to do monologues in that class, and this time I was actually prepared because my monologue was from American Beauty. Kevin Spacey's uh, deal from American Beauty, and people told me it was good. Like it started this trend, right? Where people would tell me something, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, no, seriously. And I'm like, I don't believe you because people just say nice things. And it wouldn't be until years later where I'm like, you know what? Sometimes people are genuine, that they think it's really good. And the only time random things people say usually are pretty mean. So if they're mean to you randomly, that's, yeah. Anyway, so I did, monologue from American Beauty, as well as went to a an open call for a talent agency. Did a little catwalk walk. I did my best Ace Ventura. Yeah, I did that walk and got a call back, and then was told, they asked me, what is your dream? Where do you want to be? And I was like, I've always thought my dream would be to be a regular cast member on Saturday Night Live. And they said, well, when you want to take this seriously, come back. And getting a little bit ahead of myself. That's how it ended. Um, the first thing they did was gave me a sheet of paper and says, I'll be right back. You look that over, and when I come back, read it to me. And that would be the first time a professional had tells me when they come in and I read the paper, they're like, did you memorize that? It's a paragraph. How did you memorize that? I'm like, I don't just looked it over and was like reading the words, and now I remember the words. I don't know what you want from me. You told me to do it. And they said, what's up with the voice? I was like, what do you mean? Well, when you walked in here, you were like, hi, I'm Josh, and I kind of want to be an actor or something. But when you were reading the lines, suddenly you were like, have you ever wanted to be a model? Like, where did that voice come from? I was like, I don't know. I just thought it was appropriate. Seemed like the right one to do. And they said, have you ever thought about voice acting? And I said, no. Why would I? And then they asked me about, come to think of it, I'm not saying I was an ugly teenager, but were they? Were they saying your face is perfect for cartoons? Is that what they were trying to? Anyway, so I also did quite a few projects. Going back to, we're talking about Ramsey, and I said we get to how we met later because that's in the acting category, and here we are. So, what had happened was, what happened was, a friend of mine, a very good friend, said, "Hey, I have an audition to do a cartoon. Do you want to come with me?" And I said, "No." I think she was like, "Can you take me?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Maybe you can audition too." And I was like, "Huh, that's interesting because I remember being told I'm too ugly for live action acting and that I should be in cartoons." So yeah, let's go. So we went. And sure enough, I was able to audition. And we were auditioning for Ramsey. And we were auditioning for characters in season 2 of Ghost. I wound up getting Mickey, the best friend, and I also did some of the villains lines, because apparently I did a good Sean Connery, when in fact I was just doing Sean Connery as done by Daryl Hammond, as done on SNL, because that's where the best impressions lie. Anyway, so that's my first actual voice acting thing right there, doing season 2 of Ghost. And I don't remember if I did season 3 or not. It's been a long time. But anyway, I was then asked about doing something for, gosh, I wish I remember exactly how I got connected with the Carmen Theater Group. Because now I know so many people in kind of like the circle that I'm like, but where did I come in? I don't remember. So anyway, Carmen Theater Group, wonderful acting troupe of from what I've seen, voice actors, are doing voice acting. And I did the part of Daniel in the horror radio series The Burbs. And talk about creepy, talk about scary, Leanne. Ooh, writing gave me chills, and I would have to find a way to translate those characters' psychoses into an audible. I don't know if I can do it anymore, but translate it audibly so an audience could feel the way I'm feeling. That's just voice acting. Yes, that's what voice acting is. But it truly was. Oh, don't come in! Don't come in! I'm watching porn. Wasn't expecting you, so stay there.
So, what's on the plate for today, Chief?
Another missing pet, it seems. Run off from home.
What is it with this town and missing pets?
Oh, quite the epidemic. Quite the epidemic, my boy. Oh, somebody should teach these naughty dogs a lesson. Oh.
You okay in there, Chief?
Yeah. Yes. I'm fine. Of course. Where's that partner of yours? Yeah, I gotta put a link for that. um, the 48 hour film project. That's let's back things up a little bit because there are there are some things that I've done, and that I kind of have to. Okay, many years ago, that I was part of this 48 hour film project that my sister brought me along for. I didn't know anybody there except her and I guess her friend, and I got caught up in the whole trash talking environment of, you know, putting down the project that you're on. And I did it in front of a live mic. Whoops. Uh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I shouldn't have said the things that I said, but I wasn't wrong about the things that I said, if that makes sense. But I will publicly, very publicly, apologize for my past behaviors, all of them. So clean slate, right? And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't care for the story that we were shooting at all, and everybody was great. The people were great. It's just the story I didn't get on board with. But looking back and having to realize it wasn't my money that we're playing with, so my opinion, in the end meant nothing. But I did act as a jerky husband, and I enjoy doing it. So when the opportunity to came down, when the opportunity came down to be able to do the 48 hour film project again, I was like, yes, yes, let's do it. And I'm going to get to this person in a little more detail in a little bit. Kind of like how I said we're past the part where we met, but that will come later as far as how the story is being told. So Kevin, some of you might know from Semicore Studios when it was still a thing. Kevin and I have done a couple of 48-hour film projects together. What what you saw a moment ago is one of them called Doggone Dangerous, where I was. Well, I'm not going to spoil it because I do. If you want to see it, hit me up. Comment here, and I'll make sure the link is there for you to watch. But it was it was hilarious, and I had to watch the whole thing before I started recording this segment. And another one we did was a horror movie, a horror short called Bandages, and I'll also make that available. But the 48-hour film project, it is the single most stressful experience that I've ever had when it comes to anything regarding production, because your window is so tight, and if you don't know what you're doing, you tend to lose track of time easily. But if you really don't know what you're doing, you don't understand that you're losing track of time. You don't understand that when it comes to the creation of a short film, uh, some people say, well, you have 48 hours to write it and then cut it and then format it. No. There's so much more that goes into any kind of production than those three things. And I learned that the hard way because I was kind of and still am to an extent, a little novicey when it comes to beginning to end production stuff. Like, I am not great at editing at all. I can't do color correction to save my life. I can't do special effects. What I can't do could greatly fill a warehouse. And that kind of limits me on what I can do as a, kind of a lead. And hopefully surround myself with people that do know what they're doing a little bit better. Which is, kind of what I try to do. Doggone Dangerous Kevin and the other person you saw in there was his brother Nick. Also, really, really cool, fun guy. Enjoyed very much so working with him, and who knows, maybe we'll all get together and shoot something else in the future. But I absolutely loved doing these, and I will make sure that the links for the things that we have done are available. But in the meantime, I I would be remiss if I didn't move this along, because according to my notes, I'm getting to the director bit soon, and well, you'll see. So I did the acting in the short films, and from there, I was asked if I could take on a small role in a feature. And again, I said yes, because that's what we do. We say yes. So I found myself being cast in a feature film called Henry R. Nader's The Exchange. Remember that guy? Yeah. It was a day of shooting with some dialogue with, one of the principal cast members. And it was a nice day. I got to be in a part where you're just chilling by the lake. And that was pretty chill. And from there, I did another short film. I was in Henry R. Nader's first short film called Disunity. And the biggest difference is, for Disunity, I was very much the only on-screen actor for most of the time. And honestly, between you, me, and the world, it can be a little nerve-wracking. Henry shoots with film stock, like physical film. And the guilt that can come with blowing a take is real, because you're paying for every inch of film. You got a digital camera, you can just go all day and it's like, nope, that sucked, do it again. Yeah, that sucked too, do it again. No, with film, it's like, okay, do it better, please, because you only have one more shot, and it can really weigh on you. But that added pressure makes you, I think, better. You don't become a scrambling quarterback by being safe in the pocket 24/7. That's a sports reference for those of you that don't watch sports, and that could be, a number of you. And I don't really watch them as much as know a thing or two about a thing or two. So I am very proud of my work as an actor and want to continue doing more of it. It is, to me, an honor every time that I am chosen to be on somebody's set. Because they could have chosen anybody in the world, or at least a number of other people in their phone. But I'm the one that got the call. And I always appreciate it. And I always cherish those moments that I get to spend with people that love doing the thing that I love also. And that's acting.
This is the worst road trip ever. Worst road trip ever. Worst road trip ever. Worst road trip ever. We should be driving somewhere, but instead we are sitting on the side of the road because you think too much. And now you are giving me the silent treatment. That is so childish. Let me tell you, that's so childish. Thelma and Louise, Bonnie and Clyde, Little Miss Sunshine. Those are road movies. We should be living those movies. Without the death part, we should be living those movies. Do you think The Fugitive was a road movie? Could we at least turn on the radio? Please? Damn it. Would you shut up? Jesus. I wish you were silent still. I know my name. Claire Tilden, Claire Tilden, Claire Tilden. I know my name. Just shut up at this point. Go back to the silent treatment. It's much more pleasant. Stop. I will fry your ass on this pavement. Remember that scene in Cool Hand Luke? You know, the hard-boiled egg eating contest? I will drive your ass off a cliff, even if it means taking me with it. La 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 la. I'm not listening. Stop. Stop saying that. I know who I am. I'm Claire Tilden. Claire Tilden. Claire Tilden. I work at a hotel, but I'm not going to work there forever, which was the whole point. This road trip, we're supposed to be going somewhere, and I'm not supposed to be working at a hotel forever. My name is Claire Tilden. I know that my name is Claire Tilden, and I don't need you to keep reminding me of that. I'm not going to be a hotel worker forever like you keep telling me. You're just a stupid egg. Eggs are not a superior life form on this planet. Wherever you came from, maybe. But on this planet, no. You are not the superior life form. I am. I could smash you. I won't, because that would be mean, but there. Yeah. Okay. That's funny. That's why it's funny. That's pretty funny. You crack me up. I like your yolks.
What are you doing with my car? You stole my car. What are you doing on my car?
Claire, you're supposed to be at the hotel. What are you doing?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm Claire Tilden. Broadway, television, movie sensation.
Claire, you're not an actor. You're supposed to be at the hotel right now.
I'll see you guys later. I better not see this on Facebook. Dude, you are on your own. We will catch up later. Why are you in my house? Is that my toothbrush? What's with the egg?
Okay, so I'm not the world's best director. Or, yeah, yeah. But you know what? I learned a lot about the things that I can and the things that I can't do by going through all of these experiences. I I met Kevin in literature course in college, and he and I were partners in Simicor Studios. And well, let's back it up a little bit. I've been a fan of audio broadcasting since forever, way back in the day in Alaska. Fell in love with Jack Benny, Art Bell, the Bickersons, Abbott Costello, the usual suspects when it comes to old time radio. And then as time went forward, I continued to be a big fan of these people, but I also found new loves in people like Lex and Terry, who use the audio format to entertain. And from there, I discovered, because of Kevin Smith, podcasts, and I found out that was a way to kind of have your own radio show on the internet. So naturally, I wanted to emulate my heroes like Kevin Smith and Greg Miller and guys like that. So I started following that direction. And when Ramsey wanted to do just kicking it, and we were doing it in a video format, it was just such a pain in the ass to have to set up and take down every week, especially since I had to drive across town. It eventually I said, why don't we just do an audio? Do an audio, a little podcast, an audio podcast. So that's what we did. And after 100 episodes, we had our falling out, and Kevin and I went and started Simicor Studios. where we kick things off with SCOP, the Symbicore official podcast, and had a blast doing that. Then we did Pro Noobs, the professional noobs, a video game podcast where we're not, terrible, but we're not the diehards that a lot of people are. Hence, semi-core, not hardcore, not soft, but that somewhere right in the middle. And after a while, Kevin, I always told him when it stops being fun, then you gotta stop doing it because there's no reason to do something if you're not enjoying it. So that's what happened, and I wound up, doing semi-core things as best I could by myself. And then, of course, my old battle buddy Ben came in and said we should do a wrestling podcast together, and that's where the Backstage Slam was born. The Backstage Slam are the wrestling podcast, and if I had more time, I would dig up all of these files and show you, but I didn't really have a whole lot of pre-planning put into this episode. I know it might seem like it, but I actually came up with this idea yesterday, and as a matter of fact, it's 2 minutes to air right now. So here we are, talking about the Backstage Slam, and after a while, I just got so burnt out on the WWE product, I had to step back from that. And that's when, well, there was crossover because Brandon and I had always said we should do a show together, so we came up with the WADcast. And eventually the WADcast became so much the focus of my podcasting that Semicore Studios turned into a completely different thing. And I can't close this out, especially talking about the broadcasting, without mentioning Kente, who has had me on many of his shows, whether it's Mars Venus or the Indie Spotlight. He's given me opportunity after opportunity to get my voice out there and be heard. And now we do a lot of other things together. We've done Cinema du Fromage. We did Harry's Code, a Dexter podcast, pilot seasons, what we're working on now. And Kente is a man I greatly appreciate and love like a brother because he and I share a lot of the same passions. 1 minute to air. Oh my God. And Jen, who is bringing the ferocity and professionalism week after week with the movie Potluck. Tori, absolutely killing it with her own shows, the Infectious Geek. And I haven't heard the podcast, so sorry. But and my sister Betty, who you saw in the worst road trip ever, doing the damn thing, but and being a part of this team and being a part of this community that is Wadco Media, which is my future. That's what I want my future to be. I want my future to be intrinsically tied into the name Wadco Media because I want it to be used to not only create things that are worth my time, but also your time and worth remembering and worth putting some money in my pocket for the family. So this is all I do. So all I have to do is create for you. Well, what can I say? It's technically showtime now, and I'm going to be about 2 minutes behind schedule. So I'm just going to say the only thing standing in between you and your dreams is you. There were a lot of things tossed in my path. I haven't really talked about them a whole lot. I don't like super personal stuff out here into the world. But we all have obstacles. But at the end of the day, if you say yes and you you just make it the thing you do, you'll have more shots, more opportunities to do the thing that you want. Don't get your own way. Because next thing you know, it can be 20 years later and you wish you would have done something stupid.